completely unrealistic. You might do some stuff when each squadron goes from deployment. They'll put out a cruise video, so you might kind of do some cool stuff like that. Not that close. That would scare the living hell out of me. With the older school aircraft, I'm not necessarily surprised that happens. So I think that's kind of realistic to take a little bit of a dip as you kind of exit the flight deck off the carrier, and now kind of are flying on your own. Shoot an RPG or sting and kill someone. Bragging rights, but zero realism. Yeah, we saw it again. You'd hit that canopy and you kind of just go splat as that aircraft. All right, Ace Combat 7. I grew up playing some of the Ace Combat games, so pretty familiar with this. We got an F-35 here. Something else I'm also intimately familiar with.
Aircraft and AA weaponry.
I wish we had all these kind of indications of what was out there, but unfortunately not too realistic. Same with kind of the aircraft out there, and if we could carry 121 missiles, that'd be amazing. Severely less than that. It's a ridiculous amount. You're not going to have that for a whole flight of aircraft, whether it's F-35s or whatever. It's getting way too close as he's shooting his missiles. It's pretty dumb. You try to stay further away, especially in a modern aircraft like this. No reason to go that close. Another cool thing to be able to see is like the damage percentage. But you might get a warning that like a flight control surface failed, or you have a hydraulic problem, but there's no percentage of like at 100% now I'm dead, or the aircraft's gone. There's a lot more like work you have to do to imagine or to figure out if you hit something or destroyed it, or if you missed, and just a queue. Very fun game to play, but not very realistic. I don't think you guys or girls are playing this game for the realism here. It's more of just a fun kind of arcade style game to play. You'd also maybe make a couple of passes in some kind of environment like this where they're shooting at you. If you keep on coming back, you're just increasing the likelihood of yourself getting shot down, so they can adjust their radar, their whatever they're shooting at you for how they missed previously. So if you're just giving them more and more opportunities to shoot you down or to kind of fix what they messed up the first time or second or third. While it's a super fun game to play, I played the game before and we're flying pretty unrealistic. So for our tier list, I think we're going to throw it somewhere in the C or D tier. While it is a flight simulator game, I'll give it the benefit of doubt, a little bit of nostalgia that I grew up playing the game. So I'll throw it into the C tier. I'll give it a little bit benefit of the doubt, but I don't think anybody's playing this game for the realism. You're playing it for the story mode.
Let's rock and roll.
So we've taken a look at this game, or this clip from Battlefield 3 prior. So if you haven't seen it before, you can go check out the previous Gamology video where we did Expert to React on the Battlefield 3 mission to get kind of my in-depth thoughts on that one. I wish I could walk out to the flight deck and the jet's just sitting there ready to go, but usually that's not the case. You have to start it up. Pretty unrealistic to walk out without your helmet on. And that start sequence to getting the aircraft launching off, like completely unrealistic. But do you want to spend 20-25 minutes just starting the aircraft up, doing all your systems check on the deck prior to going, or if you're playing Battlefield 3, you want to jump right into it. You might have someone join up that close to you. You're not going to be kind of flying around the carrier like that, so that's pretty unrealistic. But depending kind of what you're doing, you might have a wingman join up that close to you. The Navy will call it parade. So depending what they're doing, you kind of know that they're in some kind of war scenario. So normally he's not going to be that close. So it's unrealistic for this scenario. But in real life, they might be that close to you. Completely unrealistic. You might do some stuff when each squadron goes from deployment. They'll put out a cruise video. So you might kind of do some cool stuff like that. Not that close. That would scare the living hell out of me, especially if it wasn't planned. Because not only would you have that, you'd have the vibrations from the aircraft. Feels a little bit similar to Ace Combat, where it's a little bit more of an arcadey vibe. But again, this is what you're expecting when you go into the game. A lot of unrealistic stuff that we saw there. I don't think it was as bad in terms of being unrealistic as Ace Combat, but I'm not really sure if I'm going to throw it into the B tier. Let's throw that into the C tier. I think that's kind of on the same level as Ace Combat, where they were both unrealistic in their own kind of, attributes or ways. All right, so now we're checking out Microsoft Flight Simulator. You can play this game in a couple different ways. You can definitely play in a very, very realistic way, and people will use this game to, get an exposure into flying or run checklists. So depending on what they're doing in this video, it's got a potential to be very, very realistic. Check it out. We're now flying an airliner by some of the fighter or attack aircraft we saw, so let's see what they do here. It's not very sexy or very exciting flying, but you're flying an Airbus 320. It's a passenger airliner. He's got the pappies on the left, so he's got the 2 red, 2 light, which means he's on glide slope. So, it's very realistic and called stable to continue with approach. I've never flown an Airbus or specifically an Airbus 320. So that if we were in MD-11 and we heard that 50, 40, 30, 20 cadence, that quickly, that would be a little unrealistic for a safe landing. But from what we saw with the Airbus, I thought this was, so far it's been very, very realistic with the Airbus. But what I would be curious to see here is kind of the flight instruments, PFD, which they're getting to now. So like climbing out through almost 14,000 feet, at a decent airspeed. So there's no, he's not banking crazy. He's not, climbing crazy, accelerating, decelerating, anything that's like abnormal. Very, very, I don't want to say boring flying, but it's, there's not much excitement to be had. And, if you're flying one of these types of aircraft, that's a good thing. With what's potentially heavy rain, you might not do this takeoff, or my guess is you probably wouldn't. So for that small portion, it might be unrealistic, but these aircraft aren't accelerating crazy like we've seen in some of the other like Ace Combat games. So I think it's, for just like a sole flying thing, I think it's been pretty realistic so far. I think we're gonna throw this into the A tier. We didn't get too much of an in-depth look at the game, but the manner in which the people who were playing the game was in a very, controlled manner that fit with the type of aircraft they were flying. This is just throwing vibes back to like Ace Combat, so we'll see. No, cool, completely unrealistic. I don't think anybody expects any realism from that. Shoot an RPG or sting and kill someone, bragging rights, but zero realism. Yeah, we saw it again. You'd hit that canopy and you'd kind of just go splat as that aircraft. If that aircraft continued on the same path, obviously not working out well for you. I also wonder why, other than like, bragging rights online, why I jump out the aircraft, a modern fighter aircraft to shoot down a helicopter. Unrealistic, which is not a surprise. If you're going to pilot to fly that close to the ground, like a foot or two off, that's not just like in a takeoff phase, then like more props to you. But I don't know anybody that's doing that, even like Blue Angels and Thunderbirds. And then we've seen the jump out, the shoot, to somehow land back in. Going into this, I think we'd see something that was, more unrealistic than Ace Combat, but I think we might have found a winner or a loser, depending the way you look at it. It would be super impressive, just counting the whole jumping out and jumping back in. But, you're getting out of the aircraft with 350 knots, it looks like. I don't think anybody who watched these clips or has played this game before thinks this game's realistic at all. So I think so far this seems to be the least realism that we saw. So we're gonna throw this into the D tier for now. Okay, so we're going a little bit back in time here. Modern aircraft, as they take off the aircraft carrier, they don't really have that dip below the flight deck. With the older school aircraft, I'm not necessarily surprised that happens. So I think that's kind of realistic to take a little bit of a dip as you kind of exit the flight deck off the carrier, and now kind of are flying on your own. If this was a modern aircraft, we'd be flying at a higher altitude, most likely spread out a little bit more than this close. So kind of hard to make a determination of where we sit here. If you're flying into weather like that with essentially your information, that's a little unrealistic to be that close and lose sight, or to like do that hard bank away. So I'm gonna say that's pretty unrealistic. I'm not necessarily sure which battle they're going after here, or they're portraying kind of unrealistic. Obviously they had some big battles, we're kind of like a Midway or something like that, where you have tens, if not hundreds of aircraft airborne. They also have radar, so getting jumped by an aircraft is not necessarily an unrealistic thing, or less realistic than it currently is. That's very unrealistic. You'd be shooting until you felt safe enough to turn away so you didn't fly right into the aircraft. I assume those are aircraft or escort aircraft, so like a bomber they're escorting somewhere. Because if they weren't, they would definitely be maneuvering. They wouldn't just be flying along, not doing anything, not helping, or trying to survive themselves. You don't have the time to react, to get away from it. The opening and closing of the canopy, if they were low altitude, they might have had the canopy open. I don't think it would provide much. My guess would be it wouldn't provide much protection. Like there's like a bulletproof piece of glass. I think we'll throw it into the C tier. While there are some realistic things to take from it, I think overall, again, it's kind of along those same lines as more of a fun game to play, more of an arcadey style game, but less of a a realism or a simulator. Where when you hear the word simulator, that simulates real life. So yeah, I think the C tier is perfect for Call of Duty Vanguard.
It's insane. You can make those.
So again, DCS, they take a lot of care to. I don't know if I would call it a simulator, or if people do think of it as a simulator, but they take a lot of care to get this game very realistic. There's a lot of realistic things to take away. There's some that aren't, and that's more on the tactical side. So while it's not the way the game's modeled, it's how the person's kind of playing it, and they're not going to know the right and wrong things specifically to do. That's stuff that's you can just find on Wikipedia or via Google search. You can see he's just not accelerating like crazy. He's taking into account how much energy his aircraft has. He's also running commentary that's, he's not necessarily wrong with a lot of things he's saying. There was a couple of things that you wouldn't do in real life, which I think it knocks it off the S tier, but I think throwing in the A tier is right where it fits.
Take off at the same time,
So normally you would not coordinate to take off at the same time. They might do something like a spin rendezvous. Flying with AIM-7 Sparrows, in a modern aircraft. I'm not sure. We saw the F-35. This is not an F-35 cockpit, so I'm not sure which aircraft he's in right now. But you can see with the displays and kind of the warning systems, it's a modern aircraft.
I just bounced a missile. No way. First time doing that.
Yeah, I think over to individual playing the game, but I wouldn't say I wouldn't be that ecstatic, or maybe you would be that ecstatic, but you're not gonna just say, hey, I dodged that missile. So again, over to how the individuals play the game, but that's an unrealistic comm call or communications call. Normally if you get an over G, they're not gonna just tell you that, hey, you're currently over G'ing. It's gonna pop an over G caution or warning, and then it's gonna stick on the aircraft, and it's just gonna be kind of under display or wherever your warnings or cautions are displayed. It's both realistic and unrealistic. It's just realistic that it will tell you, but it's unrealistic in the manner that it's depicted here. Yeah, we hear the over G again. That's unrealistic. If you're pulling high G, you will definitely, if you don't strain properly, or if you just have a low G tolerance, you definitely have the ability for that to come in. So I think the way they might incorporate it into the game, I think that's pretty realistic.
Come on, that's gotta hit. That's gotta hit. It's gotta hit. Ooh, yeah.
I would say if you shoot a missile at someone, most likely, and it misses, they might have been surprised by the first missile. It was just, that someone wasn't behind them, and they would start kind of trying to maneuver. So I think that was a little unrealistic. Flying through the shrapnel was pretty unrealistic there, and we've talked about that in various manners. So for VTOL, we are not really sure where to throw this game. It's definitely not into the A tier or anything above it. It fits kind of into the C tier in a pretty good spot. Reviewing the tier list, it looks like all 6 games out of the S tier and all 6 games out of the B tier. I think that from what we saw, there's a very clear kind of delineation of the games. I think the Microsoft Flight Simulator and DCS are kind of, you play those games or you watch clips from those games, and they're in a different league than the other 4 games we saw. I'm happy leaving those games in the A tier. I think there's definitely a possibility, depending how you play the game and or which individual aircraft you're flying, the ability in both of those games to elevate that into the S tier. If you want to check out more videos like this, another Experts Rank, another Experts React, go check out Gamology on YouTube or Facebook. You can also follow me on Instagram at GREGR. Hope to see you guys again on another Experts Rank or React episode. Take care.